Welcome to Tackle Fanatics TV.
I suppose the Low Pro stemmed from my own fishing really, in that for quite a few years it's revolved around doing short overnight sessions, arriving in the evening after work, quite often having to set up sort of a bit of a race against time, against the dark, fishing overnight and then packing up the following morning before going to work again. I've always really used lightweight brolly style shelters. I used to use an Aqua 50 a lot, and then an old Evo, quick to set up, lightweight, packed down nice and small, go in a quiver, that sort of thing. That's kind of the shelter I preferred and what influenced to a great degree the Low Pro. I like a shelter that you can just basically throw up. The Low Pro on its own weighs 3.4 kilos with a traditional sort of umbrella slider mechanism. That's always going to win compared to a bit of an assembly job where you have to lay everything out on the floor and start assembling joints and so on. I think an umbrella is pretty much unbeatable in that situation. So with the Low Pro, it's just a case of putting it up in the conventional sense. I've sort of got a feel for it, so you can do it in the dark and connect the short ribs, and up it goes, and it's freestanding, and it's just a case of pegging it out. So very, very straightforward and simplistic, so perfect for when you want to get set up quickly. A few years ago I got some brolly samples made, but they were fairly conventional designs where you need your storm pole at each end to support it at the front. We were looking at them in the warehouse at work. A work colleague was sort of holding it up at the front because obviously it was concrete floor, so it wasn't supported or anything. I was stood at the back of the brolly, and I think he sort of let go of it and it fell forward onto the front ribs. The view from the back it looked right. Well, that's interesting. The shape of the ribs and the way the ribs sort of were configured looked like it could have potential to be a completely different shelter, but built around a conventional umbrella mechanism. Did some drawings and sent them to the manufacturer and asked if it would be possible to have a shelter where the two sort of longest side ribs were extended so that 6 ribs touched the floor as opposed to the normal 4, by having a break in the rib so that when the brolly was folded down it was a conventional length for going in a quiver and in cars and so on. A little while later we had the first sample come through, which was very impressive and proved the concept. It was a bit small and a bit too low. We quickly followed it up with a second sample, which proved to be spot on. Unlike a conventional umbrella, where you need storm poles, at least 2, and if you have a front on it, 4, with the Low Pro, most of the time you don't need storm poles at all because it's self-supporting, it's like a freestanding shelter. So 6 out of the 8 ribs are touching the ground. And once it's pegged down, it's very stable, even without storm poles. I've fished in some pretty horrendous conditions with it, and I'm still yet to use it with storm poles. Either I've been very lucky or it sort of stood the test. Where the ribs are extended at the front, gives you this sort of angled panel, which gives you greater coverage. So when you're sat under the brolly, you can have kit in front of the bed chair, and your kit is still going to be protected. With the height adjustment, by moving the front ribs in or out, you can go from having the Low Pro set really low, where you've almost got to crawl under it to get in it, or you can jack it up quite high, so you can bring the ribs in, have the front quite high, and if you want to use storm poles, you can jack it up even higher. So even if you're quite tall, it's still going to offer you plenty of headroom. The Hideout has been developed because pretty much as soon as we launched the Low Pro, we were getting asked for a full system. Now it made sense to make the full system shelter, which will generally get used for longer sessions and so on. It made sense to make it a bit larger than the Low Pro. So it's built on a larger frame, it's more like a 60-inch frame, wider at the back than the Low Pro, and it sits higher. So in its optimum position, it's quite a bit higher than the Low Pro, so giving you a lot more headroom. And also it's got the integrated fronts, so they roll back, there's very little bulk, but you've still got the full fronted shelter without all the additional zip baffles and heavy duty zips and so on, and it works really well. So when the front panels are rolled back, you barely even notice that they're there. The Hideout also comes with a detachable door. It velcros at the top so that the two-way zip means that you can roll it down from the top sort of letterbox style for when the weather's really bad but you still want to be able to see out, or you can roll it up from the bottom. It also has a mozzie mesh panel in the door, so on those nights where the mozzies are being fairly active, you can have the door down but still get plenty of air through with the mozzie mesh. With the Hideout, you obviously get the brolly, you get a full-size heavy-duty ground sheet, 2 storm poles because it's best used with storm poles, obviously pegs, and the outer bag. The Hideout is, when it's broken down and rolled up, it's still the same length as the Low Pro, so it's a conventional length, 1.8 metres, and will go in most quivers. We've also been working on mozzie mesh for the Hideout and the Low Pro, and an overwrap for the Low Pro, which will be out next spring. The Hideout is like the big brother of the Low Pro. Although it sort of sticks to the same concept and ethos as the Low Pro, it does provide that extra degree of coverage and comfort.
You've been tuned into TFTV. Tackle Fanatics stock an extensive range of tackle and bait from all the leading manufacturers. To check it out, go to www.tacklefanatics.co.uk. Remember, Tackle Fanatics also offer finance to make your tackle purchase more affordable. Tight lines and wet nets from everybody at TFTV.